Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Something's going on. Do you hear me? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Something's going on. Do you hear me? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Something's going on. Do you hear me? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. Something's going on. Do you hear me? Can't hear you. Can't hear you. So you hear me? In my end, everybody's mute. Technical difficulties. Oh, Sam, you hear me? Oh God, I got somebody.
Let's see. There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, I hear you now too. I guess my earbuds didn't want to work.
Your phone camera is giving you a perfectly round head, like just magnificent round head.
I thought it was going to be in person, so I'm here at the church.
Oh.
Well, I'm here early. My car.
I like your shirt. Are you ready to war or going hunting?
Thank you. A little both.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
It's gonna echo. Yeah. This is what I'm worried about. Okay. I'm running out of ideas on what to do. Yeah, there's an echo. I don't know what to do, guys. Unless we do this with an echo. It's already late. We're just gonna get started. All right, so the first question is love versus lust. Let's start there. Who wants to start? What's the difference, guys? Whoever's keeping the timer from YouTube, make sure you're doing that.
All right, I guess I'll go first.
Okay.
All right, so love versus lust. So lust, I would say it's having a very strong sexual desire for someone, where I guess this desire is to do evil or sinful things with someone. Love is, well, I guess love is kind of defined differently by everybody. So I think if we ask a bunch of people, everyone's just going to give like a different answer, really. But I guess if we pin it down to something, it would be a feeling that you have towards someone, but those feelings go towards doing a goodwill for that person. So it's doing good more so. So it's opposite of lust. So the difference between the both is that one impulses you to do something sinful, whereas the other one should impulse you to do something good for the person that you love. Yeah.
I think it also matters. Oh, can you guys hear me from the other one now? I think that as Christians, we actually have to make a distinction between what kind of idea of love we should have. Because while people do have different definitions of love, as Christians, our definition of love should be the biblical perspective. So regardless of what we may think love is, it doesn't, because part of being a Christian is allowing God to like transform our mind of the things that we believe. Part of that being what we believe about love. So, and I think that that's a lot of the trouble that the world is having, is not being able to define love accurately. And that's where we've gotten into this whole love is love trend, because what people think love is completely off from what God meant when he uses the word love. which is like agape. I don't know if what I'm saying is making sense. Like one time I had a student who said, love is love. And I said to them, so what does that mean? And they said, well, as long as two people love each other, they should be together. And I said, okay, so what if a pedophile tells you that they love a child? They're like, oh, that's different. I'm like, well, that's what love is to them. And since you're saying that all that matters is that person loves that person, then you don't have a way to rebuttal what that person is saying. So it's important that we realize that while love is important in a relationship, it isn't the only thing that matters, because you could say you love someone all you want, but if you're doing it wrong, then it's really not the biblical love. And I continue echoing, so someone else talk now.
I think essentially lust is selfish and love is selfless. So it's one of those things where lust is thinking all about what is beneficial towards you, or is pleasurable to you. I think love, as far as the Christian concept of it, being that God is love, it's about being selfless. It's about what you can do for that other person because of the love that you have for them. So essentially, like what Liz said, just in capturing it, is that lust is just about your own pleasures, and love is more of what you can do for the other person because you love them, and reflecting what God's definition, or the true definition of love, would be.
Anybody else? So if we put this, oh gosh, I hate this echo so much. If we put this in simple terms, I think we can say that lust is a much more sexual thing, and love is more about taking care of the other person. Like Rafi said, a selfless, kind of like what Jesus did, right? Like looking out for another and not yourself. As opposed to lust that's much more sexual. And the thing is that Hollywood makes these two things the same thing. You know, there's that phrase love at first sight, which is not even true. That doesn't exist, right? At least not biblically. There is no such thing as love at first sight. But Hollywood is full of movies that make us believe that, you know, love is at first sight. And that doesn't really exist. And I think it's important to, I was talking with my coworker the other day that, you know, research shows that arranged marriages last much longer than how we do things here in the Western world where we date. And I think that part of that reason is because of the level of commitment these cultures have in marriage, where they're committed to love the other person. And keep in mind, you don't know this person, right? If it's an arranged marriage. So you're choosing to commit to them and be faithful to them, and to take care of them, which essentially is most of what love is actually biblically. So it would make sense why these marriages are lasting longer, because if you are willing to sacrifice and give and commit to someone you don't know, that's says a lot about your character, of what you're willing to do to commit to the words you said about something being for life. So I think that should teach us a lot about how much you can actually love someone if you only choose to, because love is a choice. It's not like Hollywood paints it, where it's about the romance and all the sexual stuff. That is lust. That part of the dating process in the Western world is more lustful than love. I think we can move on to the next topic. So, Ray, go ahead and tell me.
How far can Christian couples could go before they get married?
Can you repeat that?
How far can Christian couples could go before they could get married? Go far.
How far can couples go before getting married?
Yeah.
I really don't want to talk because of this echo for somebody else.
So essentially, with me, I think that this ties in perfectly with lust and love, because if you've chosen to love someone, that means you have to respect them. That means there are certain rules and bylaws that we have to abide by, and lust will ruin that for just about every couple. So it's a great transitional question, because of the fact that how far you can go as a couple, as a Christian. I mean, we would go back to the Bible in a lot of areas, but it doesn't specifically say like you may not hold hands as a couple. Like obviously, the Bible's not going to go into that kind of thing. But God also gave you a mind that is capable of logically thinking and reasoning. You don't put your finger 2 inches away from the fire because it's going to burn. So it's the same mentality where you're supposed to know how far. First of all, the big problem that we have as humans is we don't understand our limitations, and we don't run away from the things that we should run away from. So a lot of people trust themselves. I saw this analogy one day, and it was something like Christians don't go from thinking about sin to sinning. It's more a transition. It's thinking about sin, doing the error of trusting yourself, and then you sin. It's one of those things where you always overestimate yourself of your willpower. I think a lot of humans, even Christians, do quite a bit. Your willpower has its limitations, and God knows this. And this is why God, even when Joseph was tempted, he ran away, because it's the right thing to do, is run away and stay away. And unfortunately, couples nowadays, because of, again, back to Hollywood movies and everything, they depict almost like romanticism has to do directly with lust and everything that comes with it. And unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, God has given us these rules that we have to abide by. And there's certain areas that we cannot get to as Christians or as a relationship in general. Actually, I think statistics say that if you get married as virgins, obviously there's more likelihood of you staying together. And maybe not just sex could be at question. There could be kissing, there could be touching. When I was in school, there's the bases. You have to understand that when you go down a slide, you can't stop halfway. All right. If you make the decision not to go down the slide, so you don't ever start. That's a difficult one, especially with couples and teenagers. It's not as easy, but we definitely have limitations. Now, limitations as a couple, you have to get to know each other. You have to ask these questions that most couples don't ask. They kind of just dive into the lust. But I think as sin, I would defer to you guys. Like when it comes to like kissing and hand holding, what you guys would believe or what we think would be the truth.
So I think that Christian couples shouldn't go far at all. Just piggybacking what you're saying, because touching of any sort. Our parents, when we were little, told us don't touch them here because those are private parts. Well, guess what? Those private parts are still private parts, even though we're adults. So touching of any sort of private parts it's still not okay. Passionate kissing or foreplaying, any type of that intimacy should not be crossed, because that was designed for marriages, because it leads to something else. So it's not that it's like what you said, you're not gonna go down the slide and stop halfway. No, these things lead up to something else. And if you're not in a position where you can biblically fulfill that, you shouldn't be doing it at all. So I know people or couples, I can imagine it's, well, I'm not can imagine, right? I was Christian and I was a couple, but it's hard, obviously, because you feel a certain way towards somebody, but it's holding yourself accountable because you love Christ. Okay. You're doing it because you love Christ. If you feel like you can't, then you can find someone that you can find and to hold you accountable. We all have our weaknesses. We know that guys and girls are totally different. You know, a guy will probably get excited faster than a girl, or a girl might want something differently than a guy. So if there's a boundary that needs to be set, then I think that should be set within the couples. Girls respect and don't entice the guy. Guys don't disrespect the girl. If you know that a certain touching, like a thigh or something, is going to entice someone, don't do it. You know, you guys should know your boundaries, and individually at least. So holding hands, I mean, if we want to get specific, holding hands, I don't think it's bad. Passionate kissing, I mean, that's just leading you somewhere else. You should not at all. My opinion, you shouldn't do it. You know, and even Paul says in the Bible, flee from sexual immorality. I mean, flee from it. If you know it's going to cause you to sin, flee, like run. Don't fall into that, because you will be falling into something that you will you will regret it. You know, it's something that leads to something else. And yeah, we should just restrain ourselves from falling into sin.
And unfortunately, as teenagers, for men, I can speak for men, your testosterone is through the roof. You can literally, now, biblically speaking, holding hands is not bad. But men, that could be enough. So you need to be careful.
Yeah. Don't rub anyone's leg.
Yeah. I think
girls look more for like the affectionate part of a relationship more than guys. More for they love, I want to say.
Again, it falls back into the Hollywood. I mean, it's like you cannot have romanticism in Hollywood without lust or without all that. Like you can easily, there are ways to again, I think teenagers have a lack of being able to express themselves through words. But if you could, there is a lot you can do. Would say, but that's actually how you get to know people, is to talking. Just like every other relationship, but your best friend, you don't have to touch them to get to know them. So you can build a strong relationship, a foundational relationship, without necessarily having to touch people. And even then, it's you know, you'll learn more about yourselves, you'll learn more about each other, and it's not the only thing that the couples are focused on. The problem with what I've seen when I was in high school is that's all you cared about. That's, you know, when you guys talked about hey, how's your boyfriend doing? Like they would lead to those conversations. It would never be like did you talk this? He talk about his parents. How does a relationship with his parents? I mean, I know teenagers don't think about this stuff, but it's essentially a failure of parents, essentially a failure of adults not teaching them how things are supposed to be done as well.
I also think it has. That's horrible. I'm not gonna talk.
Can't you mute that or the sound, even though you'll still be? Can you only mute that one?
So if you think, yeah, it's gonna be. So that you're, I'm not gonna be able to talk without being annoyed. Hold on, let me put this. I'm just gonna put the volume on. Okay, so if you think about it, teenagers should be trained by parents to start noticing the important things. Because I think that if you think about it in high school, when you get into high school at 9th grade, you're only 4 years from being an adult. That's no time at all. And you don't become an adult overnight just because you turn 18. There are certain qualities and characteristics that you are looking for to consider someone an adult. So we've come from this concept of, in the United States, where when you turn 18, you're an adult, but you haven't even taught this child how to think. And just because overnight they turned 18 doesn't mean that if they're suddenly developmentally or emotionally adults. And I think that we need to start training our kids from high school years of what's important in a relationship, what's important in a marriage, what to look for, what characteristics and qualities to seek in a potential partner. Because if we're going to teach our kids to remain faithful to God, they don't have until 30 to get married unless, God forbid, they sin. Now, I'm not saying that nobody can do that. Obviously, there are people who can hold, themselves accountable and be faithful until a much mature age. But for the most part, you're going to have people getting married in their early 20s. At least average people will get married around that age, which means you need to start training your child at high school years to start seeking and looking for the important qualities in someone who's going to potentially be a spouse. And we don't do that because we dumb down teenagers so much. We think, oh, they're just a kid. Don't talk about that. They're not ready for marriage. Sure, all those things are true. They are. I don't like to say they're just kids. I like to say they're young adults. They're getting there already, and they're not ready for marriage, so they shouldn't be getting there. But we should be training them to think in a way that will help them get married and get ready for marriage. And we don't do that. They're 18 and suddenly, okay, you're ready to date now. And we didn't teach them what to look for. And it's like the hormones and testosterone is on blast. And there you just throw them to the wolves. Like, you're an adult now. Go get a boyfriend. And it's like, what do I look for? Tell me what to look for. Now, in an ideal world, you have parents who showed you the ideal marriage, and so you'll seek after that, someone who has those qualities that you see in your parents' marriage. But for the most part, I don't think that we could say that, especially in the Hispanic culture. It's hard to find parents who are Christian and are ideally, and I think that's just in general, I don't want to make it a cultural thing, where your parents are actually, how do you say that? When your parents are actually role modeling what a biblical marriage is supposed to look like. Because it's so easy to say, yeah, my parents were great people, but you don't hear my parents had a great marriage very often. It's usually I love my mom. She was a great person. I love my dad. He was a great person, but together they weren't really good. That's usually what happens. So I think that, yes, teenagers should not be dating, but I think we also dumb them down way too much. And when it comes to preparing them for that dating world, and those 4 years of high school are perfect, to train them, not for them to date, to train them for those dating years to come. So I think that how far they can go has a lot to do with how we teach them the character of God. And if we teach them the character of God and why it's important to please him, why it's important to do what he asks of us, we will understand that sex and all that good stuff that comes with it is totally acceptable to God, in marriage and not outside of that. And that he's totally okay with you doing all that stuff within marriage, not before then. So how far can a couple go? Not very. And we shouldn't. I mean, if you think about it, back then, there were arranged marriages. You didn't really even get to hold that person's hand. Now, at least you can hold their hand, right? In the Western world, that's totally acceptable. But back then, you did not even get to see that person except from far away, like, hello, until your marriage. Like, so it's totally doable. It's just that our Western culture frowns upon that, because everything's about how many people can you sleep with before you get married, because once you get married, your life is over. That's kind of the idea, the ideology behind it. So yeah, anybody else want to add to that?
Well, I also think that people see marriage as a bad thing nowadays for some reason. And it's essentially as well for like my generation, as you were saying, culturally, like you're almost like pushed, like get your life ready, get your life together, go for it, blah, blah. And they're almost not worried about you sitting to begin with. They just want you to get started on your life. I mean, like, te va a dejar el tren is a big thing for Hispanics. Like, you're married too late. You're not gonna enjoy the importances of life, blah, blah. But one thing to get straight is you're never gonna be ready for marriage. You can be married and still not be ready for marriage. I mean, it's like there is no getting ready. It's until you get there and start doing it. It's just going to be a huge hit because it's a huge life change. But essentially, what you're also doing is you're choosing to love that person and choosing to live your life with that person. That means you're choosing those problems, you're choosing those happiness, you're choosing everything that comes along with it. So as teenagers, I don't think they will fully understand that, because that part of their brain that understands consequence and all that is not 100% there yet. But like you said, we can essentially get them ready for that, even though they're not going to be fully developed until, probably when they're married, they will. Until then, me and my wife got married at 21, and until we fully developed at 25, that was 4 years before we were even fully developed in our brain. So, it's not that it's wrong, but your mentality should, if you make the decision to start dating as a teenager, then it should essentially be in the back of your head that this is going to lead to marriage, and you should be thinking that way, because you do have to respect your future wife by respecting her body, respecting her innocence, her virginity, and all these other things. So not that everybody does it, but what I'm saying is that's essentially what God would want us to do. And biblically, that's how far couples should go, is keeping that in mind, keeping, like Liz said, your hands to yourself and fleeing from what can happen.
I also think a big thing that happens is we have adapted in the church the culture idea that you should graduate from college before getting married. And that's not, and the thing is that as Hispanic parents will be like, I don't want my kid to get married until they finish college. But then they're dating, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, well, so you want your kid to sin? You'd rather your kid sin instead of them getting married before finishing college? It's like this big expectation from parents where college is a priority over their kids sinning. And as Christians, that's not okay. That's okay from non-Christians, right? That they want their kids to finish college. That's more of a priority than pleasing God. But as Christians, our priority from our children should be that they please the Lord. And if that means they get married before they finish college, then so be it. But you should be looking out for them in the sense that for them not to sin, as opposed to, oh, I just want them to be professionals. Well, being a professional is not going to save them from hell. And we totally overlook that as a Hispanic culture because, oh, I came to this country for my children to be better and have a better life and all of this stuff. And well, a better life defined biblically would be that they have the Lord and that they're saved for eternity. And if they're going to be living a sinful life, guess what? That's not going to happen no matter how many degrees they get. So as parents, we really need to shift our mindset that the priority is not them getting a degree in college. That's good and all. I'm not saying it's not good, but that should not be our priority as parents. Our priority as parents is that our kids are faithful to the Lord. And if that means that they get married before finishing a college degree, then so be it. That should be fine with us. But if you notice, I've talked to a lot of parents, and I actually have dared to bring this up, and they stutter a lot, because they're like, well, and I'm like, what? Just be honest with yourself. If your priority is that they have a degree, be honest with yourself, but then you got something to fix, because as a Christian parent, that should not be your priority. Yeah. So that's another thing I think that hurts that standard of being faithful to the Lord through dating. So go ahead, Sammy.
Thank you. Something I was going to say is, personally, the way I see it, sorry, I'm in my truck or car and there's motorcycles out there. So personally, going back to, I think what Rafi said, or Liz, I don't remember, about being the difference between lust and love. One is like selfish and one is selfless. I think if you're worried about yourself and your needs, and you put yourself as number one, honestly, I wouldn't even worry about having a girlfriend, because in having a girlfriend, number one, you're not getting ready to get married and you're just looking for something else. You're looking to feel maybe your emotional, sexual needs. Personally, you're not, you don't pay for a house or an apartment or a place of your own. You don't own your car yet. And honestly, I think, society emphasizes our happiness first. That's why nowadays, even in marriages, it's like, if you don't feel love for your other person, personal differences, it's okay to get divorced, and get married with somebody else. But biblically, it doesn't matter if you don't feel butterflies. If you, how would I say it? That infatuation that you felt when you first loved that person, guess what? Before God, you're still responsible for loving that person. And I think, the more you talk with the older couples, they can tell you that there's times that they haven't felt like those butterflies or love for another person, especially when you live with them for a while and you see their faults more. And they see your faults as well. But I think that's the beauty of where, the true happiness in a matrimony comes, because, despite the other person's faults and stuff, God gives you strength to love that person and to make them grow better in Christ. So again, it's in my opinion, it's very selfless. You put yourself after, and that comes with kids too. I don't have kids yet, but I can imagine you'll take, what is the saying we say in Spanish? Te sacas el bocado de la boca para dárselo a otra persona. So, yeah. If you like your life right now, you want to do college, that's great. As a Christian, I wouldn't recommend having a girlfriend, boyfriend afterwards, after you become a doctor or, whatever you're going to do.
Yeah. When you're retired.
Yeah, when you retire.
Yeah, relationships are commitment, guys. So if you're not ready, I mean, don't even look. Honestly, don't even look. Because it's a selfless commitment that you're making. And I mean, I've always said this, like, don't like jump around relationships. Like, that's not a good look, one. Okay. When you're ready to settle down, I mean, you're going to look, and it's forever. It's not that you're just going to be hopping around. Oh, I like her today. I like this one tomorrow. No, it's not. First of all, it's a bad look, but also, I mean, we've got to remember always who we're representing, and that's not Christ. Okay. So it's a commitment. First, it's just deciding you're going to commit, and then going for it if you're going to do it. And there's also something I wanted to mention for the girls, because this is something my dad always would say to me, and it's something that I've mentioned it also to the Jovenes, the girls. It's directed to girls. Try not to be, because I know this is the time that we live in. It's what it's paraded, but aim to not be the girl that guys can point and say, like, I already know her or I've been with her, because we have to remember that we are made in the image of God. Our value is Christ. So respect yourself, first and foremost, because you are Christ. You're a child of Jesus. So you're a child of God. So it's, just aim to not have a reputation of that sort. Because guys talk. I know people say girls gossip, but guys gossip, y'all. Guys talk a lot, even though they don't admit it, but guys talk. So it's like Gravi said, like they didn't talk about like, oh, how are her parents? And her parents like, it's like, hey, did you go to first base? Did you go to second base yet? That's what they talk about. So, have respect for yourself and knowing that you are a child of God, that you are made in the image of God, that your value is Christ. So respect yourselves. Don't, just stay alone if you need to. And it's okay. It's okay to be alone. That's something that you guys need to understand. It's okay to be alone. Whatever these times say, it's okay to be alone. Okay. You don't need someone to satisfy anything. You will find all the satisfaction that you need in Christ. Okay. Once you get in a relationship, then you have to figure this person out. Okay. And it's hard. It takes work. Once you get married, it's work. I know people like to put this fairy tale that he makes me happy and this and that. No, I mean, yes, they make you happy, but it's work. Rafi can tell you, Sammy, Julissa, we can tell you guys it's work, and every day isn't like, oh, he brought me flowers. No, it's like, hey, right, like going there. But yeah, so it's okay to be alone. That's my point. So
my wife said that she thinks her calling was to be alone.
But she had to get married to figure that out.
I'm kidding.
No refunds.
Not really.
Yeah, I want a refund.
All right, guys, let's move to topic 3.
I was gonna say something.
Oh, go ahead, Sammy.
I was gonna say, for those boys and girls that like video games, once you get in a relationship, you'll notice how that goes away. And then when you get married, it's worse because I don't know, the ladies don't like video games.
I don't know about that.
I definitely want a refund then.
Hey, I'm not included in that. Okay, I just want to clarify.
Don't tell Jennifer, please.
She's probably watching.
This is why I wanted to hear the married couples.
It's recorded, Sammy.
Oh no!
It's live. Okay. Third topic.
Third topic is, should Christian protest? If so, how? So I'm gonna start this off. I have to say yes, because I saw a video about people in Hong Kong that they fighting for more religious freedom because they have a law that they only could praise their God or whatever in a certain time in a certain place, and how they are just being persistent, showing the government this is very important for me. For me, when I saw the story, it's kind of like when you were a kid and they just said, kids out of the pool, and only the girls could swim. They want that more time with God without worrying to be in jail. And every day they are united, protesting, walking the streets, singing songs, helping people in the community, and they get arrested. And tomorrow they're doing the same thing, showing the government that this is very, very important to us.
I think so. I think protesting is a sticky subject.
Depends what it is.
Depending on where it falls.
Yeah, it falls, yeah.
I think your reason is fair.
Yeah.
At least the one that you're saying. But I think if you consider protesting, first and foremost, you should first see what you are supporting. Make sure that these organizations or these people align and support biblical worldviews. So it's not that you're just going to support something because it sounds good, because your friends, sorry for the noise, or because your friends support it and because you want to be, following with them, but know what it's supporting. Because if you're professing to be Christian, or if you're professing to be a follower of Christ, but these organizations support things that are anti-biblical, then what are we representing? We're misrepresenting the truth of the gospel. We're misrepresenting Jesus. So then, we're making Christians already look like we're supporting something that we should not be supporting. So that's why I say it's kind of complicated. Like the whole, I guess I'll just touch it because I'm sure someone's going to touch it, but the whole Black Lives Matter situation. I know when the George Floyd situation happened, I don't agree with at least how it went down, but the way protesting is done now is that it promotes disunity, it promotes violence, it promotes hatred. So essentially, if you're not part of them, then you're not with them. Okay, so then that causes a divide. Okay, that's not what Christians do. We don't divide. We're called to be peacemakers. Okay, we're called to bring unity. Okay, so that's the problem with certain protests. Okay, so I remember when that happened, there was this church that I visited one time, and I followed them on Facebook. What they did, it actually impacted me, because I'm like, man, if more people did this, I think there would be a better result to things. So what they ended up doing is that they rallied within their church, in front of their church. So they invited their church members, they invited the community. They set up outside, they brought microphones outside, speakers. And what they did is that they gave people within their church and people within their community a chance to talk, a chance to vent or to describe how they felt, so that if they didn't understand, well, now they did understand. They were able to console them. They were able to be sad with them. They were able to be there with them, and then took advantage of that, prayed for them, and they presented Christ. They presented the one that can heal. So they presented an answer. That's the difference. So if you guys are going to tell me, like, I'm going to go to this kind of protest, I'm going to say, let's go. I'll go with you, because it's not promoting violence. It's not a riot. It's not promoting this unity within members, because what it's doing, you're essentially taking a bad situation and you're going to use it to glorify Christ in a way. So yeah, that's at least my input.
Yeah, I think what she was.
I think that is like perfect. How you just explained it. I think that ultimately, in anything that we do, whether it's protests, whether it's going to be a petition to be signed or anything, if you are doing it for the right reasons and representing Christ in the process, you can essentially do anything. Now, there's going to be some things that completely contradict the character of Christ and the representation we're supposed to be giving of Christ. And those things we should not do. But anything that we can do to help, like I know I follow Live Action, who organizes a lot of the protests for pro-life, but there is no violence involved. There is no disunity involved. We're defending the defenseless, the innocent in those instances. And everyone is being civilized, representing Christ. So I think that, again, I don't think that you are obligated to, as a Christian, to participate in these protests, but I think that you can, if you want to, if you're doing it for biblical reasons, representing the right truth, and if you're representing Christ correctly while you're doing it. And I think essentially what Liz said sums it up even better. So if anyone else wants to add anything.
So from what I've learned, I mean, there's different types of people. So within Christianity as well. So I feel like there are some people who are not going to try to have any type of argument or anything. And those people kind of sit back a little, which is perfectly okay. And then God has put people in place where are good at talking, maybe are good at bringing his importance in front to the, you know, whether it be a political view or whatever the case may be. So as a Christian, you don't, like she said, you're not necessarily, just because you're Christian, you have to stand up for what you believe in, blah, blah, blah. No, I mean, there's different types of people and what you feel comfortable with is what you can do. Now, that being said, there are, unfortunately, when you protest, it's almost directly, well, almost indirectly or directly related to political views. Now, well, nowadays, anyways, from what I've seen. Now, as a Christian, just make sure that you're not on the wrong view. If you get all your views from social media, don't protest. Okay, like, unfortunately, with this political and all this, ignorance is extremely high, especially within my age group, because they're thinking emotionally. They're not thinking, they like reasoning, logics, morals. They go out the window because you feel a certain way about things. You may feel something extremely strong and still be wrong. Okay, like, I know a lot of Christians are on the wrong side of the abortion protest, and they feel strongly because whether it's a personal viewpoint or whatever the case may be, that doesn't make it okay. Okay, and make sure that your morals align with what you're protesting for. Make sure that there's no ignorance in your part. And again, because it's an option, just make sure you're, like, of course, most people will protest because it's something that is personal to them. But also make sure that that personal view has made it strong within your life, which is great for protest on, but also make sure that it's biblical. Because most of the time you're protest because you feel strongly about it, but still make sure that your feelings coincide with the Bible and morals, as well as keeping peace. I am a very argumentative person, so I don't always make the goal of being a peacekeeper when I have to put my point across, because I know from my research, and my strong belief is that I'm right, but I don't always adjust that when I am protesting against someone who is giving me something I don't believe in, right? Which I fail in, but it's one of those things where you can also go to the other side. Like, you could be protesting to the wrong side, but you could also be on the right side and still doing it wrong. You could still be being too aggressive, or, you know, being too pushy about a certain subject. You have to also learn to lay back, because, like, equality is a big thing nowadays, right? And they're pushing that, but they're taking it to the other extremities. They're right with some of their views, but they've integrated these wrong views that push it over the edge. And it's like, I can't agree with you because you've gone too far with it. So again, being peacekeepers, which is a good point that you brought up, both of you brought up, is that you have to be a balance in between. You could be right and still be too pushy, and you could be completely wrong and be too emotional. So it's right in between, which is extremely hard because you don't want people not to like you, but it's okay not to be liked for good reasons. You understand? But then, like, in order for you to get through to people, they have to like you. So it's like, it's a lot of balance and give, but you have to be in between and do your part as the Christian. But again, I think protesting is perfectly fine. There's nothing against it. Just, again, it's one of those things where in your mind, you have to be reasonable, you have to be logical, and just think Christ-like.
I also, the book we just finished reading with Truthful Mamas talks about how the reason why we're saying the truth matters, that it should be from a Christ-like character, where we're doing it because we genuinely care for this person, we love this person, and we want them to be saved, as opposed to, I want to be right, I'm right, you're wrong, or I want to take revenge upon a stupid comment you made that made me angry. So the reason, the intention, why we say the truth matters, because we could be saying the truth for the wrong, not Christ-like reasons. So it's very important that we keep that in mind. Anybody else want to say anything? We got like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that we shouldn't downplay the standards of God in order to try to be okay with people that we are around. Because that's something that's very common, that we see that if you're not with them, essentially you're an enemy, and if it's as simple as that, if you don't agree with what they think or what they stand up for, you're an enemy. And if we're an enemy, then, I mean, Christ said it, they hated him before. So before us, so they're not going to like us if they didn't like him, if we're standing up for something that's the truth. And so don't downplay the standards of God. Don't downplay the biblical truths to try to fit in. Don't do that. Let's not do that. And I'm not going to say don't do that. Let's not do that, because we can all fall into that, because 1 point out of like the 10 could be correct. Well, if we're just supporting because of that one, we're still going to misrepresent who Christ is. So everything that we do, just do it with love for God and love for others, to serve others. But we should always do it with that in mind, that whatever we're doing, we need to represent Christ.
And with that, I think to compromise both Rafi and Liz's points, I think the best way to put it is, don't go out looking to be disliked. But if you're hated and disliked for defending the truth, then so be it. Anybody else?
I mean, from what I've learned is, specifically personally, is the LGBTQ community. So I've had friends that have been gay and lesbians, and they knew 100% that I wasn't supportive of anything they did in that sense of their lifestyle. But apart from that, they were probably nicer than a lot of Christians I know. And I would tell them, like, you're a very nice person. I don't support, they would tell me like, oh, but I'm like, I don't support that side of it. But that doesn't mean that I'm going to show judgment every step of the way. Now, they understand that they are judged by the word, the truth, right? But it's not your place to constantly be like, you're going to hell. Like every day is like, hey, you're going to hell. Like, no, you can't do that. You're supposed to be kind-hearted as well. So like, with one of the things I've taught with my sister, me and my sister talk a lot about political stuff. And one of the things we've talked about is transgenderism. Like, of course, some people want to be certain pronouns, right? And you don't, now at me as someone who's, I strongly believe that's not okay. I wouldn't refuse to do so. But as she has told me, it's like, but with her side, but then if they don't feel comfortable with you, how can you ever deliver the word of God to them, right? So you have to have this, and this is why I strongly think that there are different peoples for different reasons. Because with me, I don't see myself ever accepting it. I never see myself being like, okay, I'm okay with calling you a her, even though you're a male. I will be like, give me your name. I'd gladly call you by your name. I don't think I will allow myself to do anything apart from that. But there are some people that will take it strategically and say, well, I will call you that. But there, again, your intentions is to make sure that, because again, like you said, your love towards them is giving you, lets you make decisions in order to help them be saved. And if you have that in mind, I think that your intentions will always be the best, and you'll try to make the best decisions towards it. Now, that has a lot to do with the conviction. I mean, it depends on your personal conviction and how you are in your relationship with God and everything. I think there's different strategic ways of doing things and delivering the word of God, not just through words themselves, but through actions and relationships with people that are sinners, that are doing sin. And that's why I said there's different people for different selections, and God will put people in your life so that you may deliver that to them whichever way that he sees fit. But that's why it's a big balance. Like, there are people that will refuse to do things for certain reasons because they're like, I don't care if you don't like me. That's my truth. That's the truth. And that's what I'm sticking to, which unfortunately I'm a little bit aggressive in a lot of areas. And I understand that. But then there's people that are better at it. They know how to make people feel comfortable, even though they know that the other person knows that they're sinners and they're not joining the group, but they're trying to deliver it with compassion and love. And that's why I think it's good that there's different types of people within Christians, but definitely don't ever, like Liz said, downplay the morals of God and what the standards that we're supposed to be delivering. Just make sure you do it with delicacy.
Yeah, and on that subject, I tried and I couldn't. I at school I had students request it, and I was going to personally talk to them and say, I don't agree with that. I'll do it, but I care about you. But I couldn't. So I actually don't. That was my original stand before I was requested to, and I at the end I was convicted too much, and I was like it was like the Holy Spirit just didn't let me. So I was like, I can't do this. I'm sorry. So just a little update on that, because I know I probably haven't told you about it. All right, guys, it's 7:46 and we have class at 8. So we're going to end here. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It was a great conversation. And we will have episode 10 sometime in July, I believe. So stay tuned for that. Thank you, guys. See you in class in like 20 minutes or so. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.